Hello, everyone. It's a very, very cold day here in Calhoun, Georgia, where I've got the pleasure of spending time with my old friend Tony Cantrell, owner of Basic Ready Mix. Tony, I think we first met, best I can remember, we met on a pheasant hunt in Vivian, South Dakota, and it's been over 20 years. It seems like it was just the other day that we met each other, and I value the friendship. It's so good to come up here today. I think, honestly, we're 18 degrees, I think, outside, so it's probably colder here than it was when we met on that hunting trip in South Dakota. But it is good to be here, and I'm excited to give you the chance to tell your story about yourself, about your company, and we're delighted to learn about that. So let's just jump in, and if you could just tell us first of all about you. Give us a little history.
Well, I was originally from Floyd County, just on the Floyd County Bartow County line, out in the country back when the roads were dirt in both counties, and my parents both worked. We had a small farm, and my dad farmed on the side. Wound up going uptown to school, to Darlington School, the preparatory school in Rome. Back when they were going into the Georgia High School Association, they sort of thought I was going to be a good football player, but I tricked them. But that's I wound up going there, and from there, I went to the University of Georgia, stayed there about a year and a half, and had a little scholarship when I first went, but with all the fun in Athens, I wound up losing it my sophomore year, and my dad decided we'd had about enough fun, I could find something else to do. So I went in the Marine Corps for 4 years, and came back out, and went to, in 1980, went to work in heating and air conditioning, and I don't know if any of y'all remember 1980, but it was miserably hot, so I decided to go back to school. Went to Berry College, met my wife, who was just getting out of the University of Georgia with a degree in accounting, and she had went to work for a public accounting firm in Rome. We got married in 1982. Right after we got married, I was still working part-time and going to school, and the largest employer, Trend Mills in Rome, shut down, so she wound up going to Atlanta. I loaded up my last quarter of school and graduated a little bit early and took a job at a concrete plant, working on a yard at the old Williams Brothers Chambly plant, and worked there for a couple of weeks, and they asked me if I'd be interested in training to be a batch man, and I said sure. And beats working on the yard, and so went in, was doing the little batchman training class that Williams Brothers had back then with 4 or 5 other people, and found out in the meantime that I had a degree in chemistry. Somebody mentioned it to Horace Williams. Horace called me up to the office, and we talked about 15 minutes, and they were dabbling in making their own admixtures, some water reducers and certain things, but they wanted to get deeper into it, and Horace decided I could do it, and put me in charge of it, and so that's kind of how I got started learning about concrete, was from the chemical end of it and making admixtures. We made retarders, water reducers, air entraining agents, then just whatever else we needed to get into. We started changing over dispenser systems and everything like that. But so
let me ask you real quick, Tony. What year was it that you started working at Williams Brothers?
I started at Williams Brothers in December of 1982. I got out of school on a Friday and went to work there the next Monday morning so I worked there for 83 and 84 to 85. And in the fall of 85, Williams Brothers sold. Marshall was my boss at Williams Brothers, ran the technical services department. He was not going to be asked to stay at Blue Circle, and so he wanted to go find ready-mix operations to buy, and asked me if I'd be interested. And I had the sweat, and they had the money, so that's what we did. And started looking around North Georgia for different places, and ran across D&S Best in Mineral Bluff, Georgia, which Marshall eventually bought. We put that together, and then Marshall asked me if I wanted to go run it, and I said, no, my wife's not moving to Blue Ridge, Georgia, which Blue Ridge was not quite as nice back then as it is today.
Right, right.
But
so that's late. That was late '80s, you think?
That would have been 86. Yes.
80s, about 86. Yeah. Okay.
And so started. Got somebody else. Scott Godfrey and Marshall went up and purchased that, and then so we started looking at up around Dalton. Looked at a company around Dalton. Couldn't make the numbers work on it, and then found Basic Ready Mix here in Calhoun, and put the numbers together on it, and wound up buying it with an industrial revenue bond, and just going from there.
So that was what was Basic at that time when you two came on the scene? What was the company then?
Basic was a single plant operation in Calhoun. It had been here since the late 50s. Guerin Construction, it was Mr. Guerin and Mr. Collins, gentlemen that I never met, that started it. They built the plant. Superior Steel actually built the plant in 1960, 61. And Wendell Kitchens, I don't know if any of you, some of y'all may remember Superior Steel. They were concrete plant builders around Atlanta, local people, did a lot of other stuff, battery plants and different things, but worked with them at Williams Brothers. Actually built the admix plant that we built at Williams Brothers. And but in 1972, the Collins family bought out Guerin, and it became Basic Materials. And they built a store that we're sitting in right now that was a True Value hardware store. Then they had a concrete plant just about a block down the street. And they also had an oil distributorship that was across the street. When we bought it out in May 10th of 86, and showed up for work on the May the 12th, and started running it, and knew very little about the ready mix business. I knew how to make concrete. I knew about admixtures. I knew the technical side of it, but I did not know the business at all. And so that was on a Monday. And
now, what was your kind of your beginning role? You know, when you guys launched it.
President and 50% owner.
Wow.
I was 29 years old, and even though it was a small business, I was way over my head. And,
wow.
So started that morning about 6, and about 10:30 that morning, Horace Williams pulled onto the yard, and Horace had nothing to do with the business at that time other than being Marshall's dad. And so he stood out there and leaned up on it, had an old tree on the yard at that time, and he parked in the shade and just stood there and watched. And when I got everything caught up, and started back over to my what was going to be my office at the basic materials store, he stood up and lit into me about what I didn't know, and just really chewed me out. And I was scared to death of Horace at the time. Still called him Mr. Williams. And
now, how old do you think he was then, roughly?
He would have been. He was born in 1917, so I'd have been put him 71.
Okay.
And
okay.
I mean 69.
69. Yeah.
So he didn't show up Tuesday, but he showed up again on Thursday. I mean Wednesday did the same way, and then Friday he showed up again, and he when he stood there against his car, and when I started walking across the yard, he stood up and started pointing his finger at me about something, and I said, Mr. Williams, I said, you're just going to have to come in the office here and talk to me for a minute. And so when we got in there, I shut the door, and I said, I appreciate you giving me advice, but I said, you're going to have to get off my back. I'm the only SOB here, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And he said, well, if you'll let me help you, I'll come help you.
Wow.
And so he did. He showed up 3 or 4 days a week and sat in my office, waited on me to get there if I was out doing something else and whatever, and really just spent a lot of time here and with me. I always say he was the best compliment he ever gave me is I wasn't screwing up as bad as I used to, but I learned a lot from Horace, and enjoyed my time with him. And he stayed here with us. We wound up building a plant in Rome in 1987, then building a plant in Dalton in 1988, bought out our competition in Rome in 89, and bought a little plant in Cedartown in 90, and then my wife I had tricked her into leaving her job in Atlanta and coming to work as our CFO, and so she walked in sometime in early 91 and said, if y'all don't quit buying stuff and building stuff, we're going to be bankrupt. She said, we might be bankrupt now. But so we told Horace came in. I said, here's the numbers. We need to slow down. And sure enough, he said, okay, we pull our horns in. And so that's
well, let me ask you this, because I'd always heard, I know Randall Porter, my old dear friend, had told me that Horace was a real numbers guy, I thought. And can you say a little bit about that? And wouldn't he have, I guess what I'm wondering is, would he have led you astray on all this expansion, or?
No, I don't think Horace was leading me astray. I think Horace had the wherewithal to absorb what was going on, and
right.
Tony didn't, and so there was a point in time where I think Horace saw me not being involved in the business, and not saying Horace. I always said about Horace Williams, he's a good man, but he would not step on you to step up. But if you were in the way, you might get run over, and so I was trying not to be in the way. And so
now Marshall at that time, his son,
yes,
was part owner.
Yes, he was
with you.
Yes,
right. Okay.
Marshall and I started out 50-50. We brought Horace in as a third partner, really to try to use Horace's financial strength to borrow some money to start expanding with. As it turned out, we borrowed the money from Horace in form of a preferred stock that we had to pay it back, and that's just sort of how we got started. That's how Horace became part of an owner of the business. In '94, Horace got out and divided his stock up between Donnie and Marshall, his two sons, and shortly after that, I bought Donnie's stock back, put Marshall and I back to 50% ownership each, and so we worked like that. Marshall, really, his intention was with his his age and everything. He was looking to sell. I didn't want to sell. We couldn't come to an agreement until finally about 2006. We got to a point where I was able to borrow the money to buy Marshall out, and that's when I became the sole owner in 2006. And so stayed that way.
So just before the Great Recession hit.
The Great Recession hit. I bought out my partner, got into developing a subdivision, and built 2 new concrete plants, and promptly watched it all dive out from under me.
The music stopped.
Yes, and those were some long, lean times, but we got
through it.
Got through it.
It's absolutely remarkable. Real quickly, to me, it's just staggering. Some of in a testimony to the caliber of people in this industry that survived a 75% downturn.
Yes.
In the top line, and got through that. What an achievement, and what a what a miracle.
Well, you mentioned about Horace being a numbers guy. I mean, in my mind, that's what saved us. It's the first thing, I guess, was when my wife came in, and we started out keeping books. We knew where we were. We had a good bookkeeping system. We knew what our numbers were, and I always tell the story about Horace had the numbers that you had to meet, and when he'd have the production meetings, and if you didn't meet them, you better have a reason, not an excuse, of why you didn't meet those numbers. But when I was up here starting to do this, my numbers weren't the same as Horace's, and so I kept looking at it. And Horace told me 100. If he told me one time, he told me 150 times that there's only so many pennies in a dollar. And I thought I knew what he meant, but one night I was sitting here working, and I was trying to make the numbers work, and my wife said, "Well, these numbers are right." And I said, "Well, okay. Well, then we got to change what we do to make the numbers change. We can't change the numbers." And so I sat down with Horace and explained it to him, and where we were, and he didn't have a problem with it. As long as the numbers worked, he knew where your numbers were coming from, he was fine with it, and you could run your business based on that. And Horace always said to run everything based on percentages, and it drove my wife crazy because she came out of Baker Industries, where they budgeted right down to how many paper towels they were going to buy the next year. But Horace did everything based on percentages of the sales dollar, which was a great way of reacting if there was a downturn.
Right.
Now, when things were really going good, you had to go back to units per man hour, or that type of metrics. But the percentages really told you when to start adjusting. So I think we were able to start pulling down quickly.
Yep.
And that's where Horace, in his generation, I'll say, was better than my generation. Is whatever the numbers told them to do, that's what they did. They kept emotions out of it more than I think people of my age group did. For the most part, we were convinced that you could manage your way out of everything. Sometimes I feel like Horace was cut your losses and go, and that's probably where, as a manager or business owner or whatever, he had an advantage over me. And I've always said I'm a pretty good operator, but I don't know how good a business person I am. I like to operate a business. I like to watch the numbers, and that's where my strength is, I think. So.
Well, I'll tell you, Tony, I knew some of this history, but certainly there's a lot of new information here, and it's really fascinating. Let me ask you this. Here, today, as you look around at the industry, at the economy, and what do you see are the top challenges that you're facing, and that you probably suspect all the producers here in our state? What do you think the big deals are out there? The big challenges?
I think the biggest challenge that they're going to be facing is just the inflation that's going on with material costs, equipment costs. Everything is just going up at such a rate, and we've been fortunate as an industry. I think not just basic, but have been fortunate at basic, but as an industry over the last 4 or 5 years that we have been able to increase prices to cover some of the inflation. So if I look at the guys here that are coming in behind me to do this, what are they going to be faced with is if costs are going up so fast, you're going to have to be very careful in their sales techniques, how they are structuring contracts or whatever, so that they have the ability to follow the cost up. If not, if we can't follow the cost which we've been able to do, if we lose that ability, then it's going to be some pretty tough sledding. I think that's if the biggest thing I would warn against.
What about one of the things that I've certainly heard a good bit of in the last, almost 2 years that I've been back is workforce and hiring and getting drivers and personnel. How do you see that situation? At least I know it could be regional, but I hear a lot of that from other producers. The challenges of hiring and retaining. Anything you would tell us about that?
Well, when we started, the market started expanding back, we did have a tough time finding people, and up until the past year, it's been the labor market's been extremely tight, as everyone knows, especially for CDL drivers. That seems to have gotten better. We're hiring out of driving schools more now. Had good success doing that, but the labor shortage has been an issue, and I guess the only saving grace was we were so slow getting new equipment in or increasing our fleet size that we had time to hunt for the labor, and but
right.
So that's where we we're looking for labor. Sometimes we didn't have equipment to put them in anyway, and we were able to as equipment trickled in, we were able to fill it.
Good.
Never any excess people, but enough.
Enough.
Yeah.
Good. I was going to ask you, I was looking at my notes, things to talk about, and one of the things I always like to hear is people who were great influences, and it's pretty obvious you've already answered that. It's Horace Williams, it sounds like.
From a business standpoint, Horace was certainly the biggest influence on what I know about business. Even before I left to come up here, making admix, I went into one of Horace's production meetings, and he threw my numbers up on the projector and just scolded me in front of about 40 people because of how bad my numbers were. So I went to see him afterwards and said, look, what I'm doing is not matching up with how a concrete plant runs. So he handed me a book, Finance for the Non-Financial Manager, and I got a brand new copy of it laying there on my desk. I give it to all my managers to look at and read. Horace was a great influence as far as how to do things. He was always looking to compare to other. He would quickly tell you his influence was Doc Rinker. That's who he would go see and visit Doc Rinker to find out how Doc did things. And
that's interesting. I've not heard that before.
Yes, he thought Doc Rinker had a better plan, a better mousetrap as far as how to run a business or whatever. And and of course, talking about Horace instead of myself, that's which is better for me. But Horace got out of the University of Georgia and became a dairy farmer. Didn't do well at that. Went into the sawmill business. Went to South Georgia and invested in a big new top, high-tech sawmill at the time. Couldn't make it work. Came back to Atlanta. And so when he came back to Atlanta to get in the ready mix business, that's one of the things he said. He went and visited people around the country to find out who was doing what and how, and Doc was who impressed him the most.
That's an interesting story that I've not heard before. So I'm glad you shared that with us. Let me ask you this: what would you say are talking about our association, the Georgia Ready Mix Concrete Association, and you've been faithful members. Tell us the value. What's the big value to you? It's you pay to be part of our group. What do you get in return for that? What's the benefit? Some of the benefit.
The benefit I get from it is just the ability to educate myself based on what other people are doing. With comparison of business models, the technology that's in the market. We've whether it's batch systems or whatever, and then just overall philosophy of people that have succeeded in similar sized businesses than what we're in. And so we've had opportunities to sell our business. There was a time in say 2012 or 2014, I thought I may have to sell it, but I had a lot of people that worked with me, helped with just ideas about what other people had done, how to get through this thing, and didn't do any of those a lot of times, but it kept me focused and pointed in a direction. So I think that's the advantage of being able to have a relationship and a forum to talk with other people that are doing the same thing.
Well, that's great, Tony. I really appreciate the time that we've had together. I guess the last thing, we've got a lot of young people, new people coming into the industry. As we finish up, is there some wisdom, some counsel, some advice that you would offer up to new folks, in sales, operations, or new owners, people coming in? What would you offer up from your vantage point?
Well, my son Ben has been working with me in the business. Be 10 years sometime this year, and what I tell him and I tell the guys that work here, at the end of the day, quality and service is what sells. And we don't get caught up in the trap of always worrying about having the latest technology and that's all good and it's all useful. We collect information so much easier than we used to get used to it all on a piece of paper, and now it's there every day when you turn a computer on. But what we're still trying to accomplish is a reputation of service and quality to our customer, and we can't lose sight of that. So that's it.
Tony, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking time I know it's not when it's 18 degrees. It's not the busiest day in concrete, but it's still you've got a lot going on, and I'm grateful that we got to be together and learn more about your company, and just best wishes to you and your folks in this coming year.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and enjoy doing this. I know a lot of people were glad that I was talking to Bill here instead of bending their ears, so I do appreciate this opportunity.